Hi, and welcome to my Cozy Book Nook. I'm Molly, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about a writing workshop that I did a couple of weeks ago with third graders. In a previous video that I made, I described the workshop that I taught on fractured fairy tales. Today I'm going to talk about the workshop I taught on how to write a mystery. And kids of all ages love the idea of writing a mystery. They may not sit and read mysteries all the time, and they may balk because they have to quotes write and they don't like it, but I have yet to teach a class, and I've done this unit with third graders all the way up to 12th graders, and there is just something about writing a mystery that intrigues all students. So if you haven't done it before, I encourage you to give it a try and see if your reluctant writer might actually gravitate towards this project. So I start off the unit rather slow. I try to start off all my units slow, actually. I want to try to build momentum. And so with this particular unit, I use a series of posters. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but there is actually a book out there called The Mysteries of Harrisburg by Chris Van Alsten, who is the author of Polar Express, if you're not familiar. And but this is, I mean, you can tell by the size. These are nice size posters that students can see from the back of the classroom, although I do encourage them to come and pick it up and look at it. And there are, I don't know, there's like 14 different posters. Let me see if I can get it a little bit closer and you can see. It's 14 different posters. And if you're not familiar with the story behind this, let's see if I can do this, if I can do it justice. This Harris Burdick had gone into a bookstore with these illustrations, and he asked them if they would be interested in these mysteries. He had written mysteries to go with these illustrations, and he just wondered if the bookstore might be interested in this and perhaps put it together into a publishable book. And the bookstore took one look at the poster, or the pictures, and yes, loved them, and they wanted to get the stories behind them. And so Harris Burdick left, promising to return the next day with the stories. The next day came, he never returned, never returned, never returned. In the meantime, the bookstore owner had shared these pictures with his own children, and they loved them so much that they began writing stories to go with the pictures. And so what's lovely about this is that there is no right story to go with the picture because the right story has never been found. And so for years now, it's provided lots of wonderful writing prompts for children. So the way I start the unit is that I take one poster and I put it up on the board, and I have all students write a story from that one poster. And I give them, I don't know, 7 or 10 minutes. It's not very long. Most students write, a short paragraph. Others tend to write a little bit more. But anyway, at the end of that time period, we go around the room and they share their stories. And this is fabulous because what students very quickly discern is that everyone has their own take on the story, and all of them are great, valuable stories. There is not one story that is better than another story. And they realize that they do have ideas, and their ideas do have merit, and if they put them down on paper, other people can enjoy them as well. So that's the way we start the unit. The next thing I do is that I take out as many posters as I have students in the class, and I'm quite fortunate to be teaching at a small private school, so we do not have class sizes of 25 and upwards. We have small, manageable class sizes. But I mean, you could take the 14 posters and you can have students work together in groups if you want, or you could have 2 or 3 students write their own story about a different poster. You can make it any way you want. But in this particular example, I took out an ample number of posters for the students in the class, and they each chose one, and they wrote a story based upon that poster. And of course you end up with the inevitable, but I wanted that one. And I said, no worries, because you will come up with an entirely different story. And if we have time at the end of the day, you can absolutely write another story. So they don't realize it, but they're already getting interested in writing, and they're already thinking about what other story are they going to tell next, which is really exciting for me as a writer. So anyway, I gave them the same 7-10 minutes to come up with another story. They shared their stories. We all loved them. But then it was time to put the posters away. And now I kind of transition into the mystery unit. So even though these posters came from a mystery book, I did not mandate that they had to write a mystery. They could just write any kind of story that, that they were inspired to write from looking at the poster. But to transition into the mystery unit, I actually bring in an Encyclopedia Brown book. These are very short mysteries. They're very solvable mysteries. They are written for a young target audience, so nobody feels stupid. So for example, while I love Sherlock Holmes, I always kind of feel like an idiot that I wasn't able to figure it out. With Encyclopedia Brown, I might not be able to figure it out, but oh, that really makes sense. So anyway, I start off by reading a couple of these, but in doing this, I'm introducing mystery vocabulary. And so I do have a worksheet, because I am the handout queen, of vocabulary for mysteries. Now this is a sheet that I used with my junior high students several years ago. I modified this sheet for the third graders that I taught, but they did learn such terms as the setting. Every story has to have a setting. Sometimes the setting is very important to the mystery that you're telling, and sometimes it's not. But you have to have a setting. You have to have a main character, protagonist. They learned that term in the Fractured Fairy Tale. So you have a protagonist. But with a mystery, the protagonist has a definite role, and that is the role of detective. And usually what we discovered when reading Encyclopedia Brown is that the protagonist also has some kind of little quirk or personality trait that sets them apart. So with Encyclopedia Brown, there's actually a lot of little quirks. First of all, Encyclopedia Brown never answers a question right away, even though he knows the answer immediately. And that is because he's a very humble person and he doesn't want to make anyone feel bad. The second thing that's quirky about Encyclopedia Brown is that he solves every case by asking only one question. So he doesn't have to come up with a litany of questions to try to discover who did it. He asks only one question, and he asks this one question after he's listened to all of the information. And usually that information comes from his dad, who happens to be the chief of police. And so the third quirk about Encyclopedia Brown is that whenever he's listening and he's focusing in on the details as his father knows them, he closes his eyes. So those are three quirks. So at this point, I kind of stop the story and I have students write down, and of course I do have a handout for that. It's a very simple handout, but I'm trying to teach them to become engaged readers. And so in doing that, I just don't want to zip right through the story. I want to kind of pause and let them know or identify for them what they're learning. So they had to write down the setting and maybe what was something interesting about the setting, Idaville, that grabbed their attention. They knew the detective and they had to write down a personality quirk about him. Very soon in the Encyclopedia Brown stories, you discover what the crime is or what the mystery is. Sometimes it's not a crime. So with third graders especially, I think I use the word puzzle. What is the mystery or what is the puzzle of the story? When students tend to get in junior high and high school, they love the crime, and the gorier the crime, the better. But third graders aren't quite there yet. But they discover what the mystery is, and they discover who is the victim. And so these are already 4 components, and they learn these very early on with Encyclopedia Brown. And then they discovered that there's always more than one suspect. Otherwise, it tends not to be a mystery if you know from the get-go who the one person is. So I had them identify, who are the 2, and sometimes it's more, sometimes it's 3, possible suspects that committed this crime or this mystery. And then the last thing that they have to identify are what are the clues. And so we do that with maybe 2 or 3 Encyclopedia Browns. I don't want to beat it to death. And there's not a lot of pictures with this. It's me reading aloud, and I don't want to lose their attention. But it just kind of whets their appetite for a mystery. And then I love picture books. I teach with picture books all the way through high school. Um, they just it's an engaging way to teach one particular focus of writing to students that kind of helps them to understand rather than me using a lot of abstract terms. So the next step in this mystery unit was to get some picture books that are mystery books, and I had the students read them. They each chose one, and I had them read it, but in reading it they had to identify what was the setting, who is the protagonist, which is also the detective, was there any kind of special personality trait or quirk about the detective, what was the mystery or the crime that needed to be solved, who was the victim, who were the suspects, and there's got to be more than one, so there has to be at least two, and then what were the clues left behind, and then finally how did it resolve. So a couple of picture books that worked really well for this class, and I thought I'd just quickly introduce them to you. One is, and there's a series, I want to say there's 2 or 3 in the series. This one is What Really Happened to Humpty Dumpty. There's another one in the series that I may still have it in here, I do, which is The Crown Affair. And these are great because it's using Mother Goose rhymes. In fact, it takes place in Mother Goose Land. And Joe Dumpty, who is Humpty's brother, is the detective. And all of the characters are Mother Goose characters. So again, it's kind of like the Fractured Fairy Tale, but with the focus of a mystery. So these were fun. Another one, there's also another book by this, but this is Detective LaRue. Detective LaRue is a dog, and a dog that kind of gets into mischief, but he has a way of turning around the situation to where he comes out as not the mischievous pup, but the hero pup. It's a clever story, and it's told in letters, which is also kind of fun. And then the last one that I used was The Web Files, and so this actually it's good for younger students because it's a very simple story, but it's also engaging for adults because it's written in the same kind of tone and vernacular as Dragnet. So it kind of is reminiscent of old TV shows that I used to watch. But anyway, those were the picture book mysteries that I use just to kind of whet their appetite for them to kind of think about when they go to write their mystery, where might it take place, who might the detective be. It could be an animal detective, it could be a real person detective, it could even be inanimate. I mean, you know, the whole idea is to get them to kind of brainstorm and come up with some really creative, unique ideas. What is the mystery to be solved? Who is the victim? Who are the suspects? There needs to be at least 2. And then what are the clues that lead the reader to the right suspect, and then a satisfying conclusion. We didn't have a chance to actually write the mysteries with this class, but they did have a chance to brainstorm. And I just had them do it on a sheet of paper. You know, I had them basically use this sheet that they used when we listened to Encyclopedia Brown, and they just kind of filled it out for their own story. For older students, and I would say probably maybe from 5th and 6th grade on up, I actually had an entire packet of handouts. One was the vocabulary sheet. The other one that I'll share real quickly, and I got this online, I'm not quite sure where, but it's called Detectives Log, a Graphic Organizer. So if you wanted to see if maybe the PDF is still available online. I like this because it makes kids kind of think step by step, what do they need to consider before they actually start writing. And it makes them think not just of the victim, but what does the victim look like. It has them think of character traits, and it gets into just a little bit more of the details of writing. Whereas with 3rd grade, we were just going to write a fun mystery. But anyway, that's my mystery unit. I can say without a doubt it has been a popular writing unit with all grades. I've used it in 3rd grade, in 5th grade, in 7th and 8th grade. Haven't quite used it with upperclassmen, but upperclassmen love to write narrative because they're so sick and tired of writing academic papers. They would welcome any kind of creative writing assignment. So anyway, that is the mystery unit. I hope that you found something useful in it. If you use any part of this in your own classroom or in your homeschool setting, I'd love to hear how it worked for you. If you made any adaptations to it, I would love to hear that as well. I'm always looking to tweak my lessons to make them more engaging for the students that I teach. Thanks so much, and have a great day.